Paul, you may laugh when I ask you this question. I saw a couple years ago that an organization bought GitHub. GitHub was this kind of open source repo for guys like you to put their stuff. Let's ask a controversial question. Do you think that Microsoft has eroded some of the community in collaboration with
No,
their acquisition of GitHub? No? Okay.
I think a lot of people were worried about that, right? There was a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth when that acquisition happened,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people were concerned. But what's been clear to me at least is that it seems like they've invested in all the right ways to GitHub, and they've kept the community alive. GitHub is kind of it's almost social media for nerds, right? It's where people will go and post their code and share it with the world, and it allows people like us to go and share things with the community to allow us to not just serve our paying customers, to put stuff out there that can benefit the wider community. And I think they've done a really good job, and they continue to do good things on that front because they're kind of the front lines of the open source ecosystem. And there's a lot of talk these days about supply chain security and things like that. And a lot of open source projects have really suffered from security issues that aren't really, it's hard to defend a product when that product is free and nobody's paying the folks who are doing that. But they're doing some good things to try to help protect those, like starting to enforce multi-factor authentication on contributors and things like that. So,
Signatures, right, and all that.
yeah.
Paul, I have just a really layman's question for you.
Mhm.
And please don't judge me for asking this. If Soteria has produced a tool to find chinks in organizations O365 tenant, why don't you just save me all this time, call Microsoft and say, plug these 80 holes in your dam so I'm not vulnerable? Like what is it? Like are they allowing these things? Like what are you checking here so that we know whether to open, close, and why doesn't Microsoft, when they deploy the tenant and I pick buy domain and add users, why doesn't it come with these things already hardened?
Mhm. So it's a good question, and there's a couple of answers to that. One, there's Microsoft, their business, right? And ultimately, they need to make their products as easy as possible for their customers to use, and they need to balance that need with security, right? It goes back to what I was saying earlier, where they don't exist to be secure. Although you could argue it's way more important for them than the average organization, but they want people to buy their products and use them and keep on using them. And if you're if you're a dentist or you're somebody who's starting to start a pet grooming salon or something like that, and you want to set up your email and you can't figure out how to get in because it's too complicated and you can't
You're
figure out.
going to go to the competitor, right? That's what.
So they have to balance that, and I think that there is more that can be done to make it secure and easy to use. But then the other piece is, the flip side of the coin for very large organizations is sometimes people do things to make systems less secure, and they don't necessarily know that they're doing that. And Microsoft's not going to stop you from doing that, right? I'm not going to buy a house that says that doesn't have a door that I can open because opening that door is more like less secure. Like, it's a nice day out, I want to prop my door open, and I get that it's less secure, but I don't care. And it's my responsibility to remember that I need to close it at the end of the day, or to return it back to that secure state. And it's a clunky analogy, but I think that happens a lot too, where organizations will will configure not just Microsoft, like any product that they have in an insecure way for one reason or another. And sometimes it's like, I'm just going to do this for now and I'll come back and fix it later, but I got to get this thing working, or there's a business requirement for it, and maybe they plan to fix it later, or they just don't realize the level of risk they're exposing themselves to, so they don't ever come back and reevaluate that. So I think there's multiple reasons, but ultimately Microsoft 365 and just like a lot of the other SaaS ecosystem is massively complex. There's a lot of things that you can do. It's always changing, and people just don't really realize because they can't wrap their minds around it all that easily of where all the
Got it.
potential risk can lie, and what was there today versus yesterday, and so on and so forth.
Great, good to know. And then this is kind of, if I just go to GitHub and I search 365 inspect Soteria, et cetera, I'm going to be delivered this structure here. What do I click on? Is it in the inspectors folder? Should I just start with the README? Give the audience some guidance around where it is they need to get started.
Yeah, I would say you start with the README, right? So the README will walk through what you need to do in order to get it to run. But as far as getting the code from this site into your computer, on the top right of the graphic there's a little green code
Right
button.
here.
You click
Okay.
on, and you could download it as a zip file, and that'll drop it right on your desktop. Unzip
Great.
it, and then you can run the PowerShell script.
I could run it. Glenn Starkman couldn't. So this is kind of the RTFM. Did they ever say that in the Air Force?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they said that, but yeah.
Okay. They use that all the time in the Marine Corps. This is where you'll start, folks. This right here is your portal to securing and at least having visibility into your 365 environment.